2 minutes, that means it is time for the MMA Junkie Radio pre-show, starring us. Today's Tuesday, October 24th, 2017. I am Goz, that's Dan Tom. He's the best fight analyst in the game. Back in New York is our producer, Danny Okalokers. Gorgeous George is somewhere in an undisclosed location in Las Vegas. Enterprise, to be exact. You like that, guys?
One of the best places ever, right?
Of course. One
of the
top 50. You want to hear something funny? The place we grew up, the mean streets of Santa Ana, was actually one of the safest cities in America. But the reason it was the safest was because they kind of fudged their stats. So what they would do was if, say there was a home invasion and I broke in and I killed a family of 5, that would only count as 1 murder. The way they would do their stats. So really,
it's so messed up.
I know. So it was, but like, trust me, Santa Ana has got some really bad parts to it, and then I think it's got some cool spots. But don't get it twisted. Our sweater vests were mean.
30.
Christina Bruman asks, "Why aren't you repping your team?" Well, I got a good answer for that. It's because I have this stupid workout with Ulysses Gomez where he's going to beat the crap out of me for an hour. And I didn't want to have to wear my gear, then change into other gear, then change back into my gear. So more than likely, tomorrow I may... well, actually, no. You know what? I probably won't wear it on the show either because I'll come dressed in regular and then change into it for the game.
This is your captain speaking. We are making our descent into Las Vegas McCarran Airport. On behalf of our crew, we'd like to thank you for flying MMAjunkie Airlines. Now please fasten your seatbelts and put your tray tables in your upright position because the descent is going to be a little bit bumpy.
Alright, Junkie Nation, it's time to roll, baby, on MMA Junkie Radio with Gorgeous George and Goz. This is what we do and why we do it, baby. All night long, we rollin'! Yes!
The MMA Junkie Radio revolution is upon us.
Can you dig it?
There's no escape. No escape. Through the vast frontier of cyberspace and through a sea of stars in outer space.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We've solidified our combat communication stranglehold.
We are controlling transmission.
With the use of MMA Junkie Radio and SiriusXM satellite radio technology. MMA Junkie Radio. Commence transmission. Live from MMA Junkie Radio HQ in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Here are your hosts, Gorgeous George and Goz.
Tuesday, October 24th, live from Las Vegas, the fight capital of the world. To be more specific, the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino Sportsbook. That's Goz and Dan Tom. You're checking out on the video screen. If you're watching that, I, of course, am at an undisclosed location somewhere in Enterprise, Nevada. Danny Otto, he's handling the producing duties back east at the SiriusXM studios. What's up, guys?
What just happened?
I'm very confused.
Yeah.
Just changing it up. I mean, I can't throw 100 miles, 101 miles an hour every single day. Sometimes I'll just, throw a changeup, a curveball or something, knuckler.
I mean, I guess, but your thing is you throw that 100 miles and no one else can do it. So, like, people are just whiffing over and over. Unless you get bored, then, yeah, I get it. Like, you want to make the game more competitive, like what's going to happen today to the Astros. But, yeah, I guess. I mean, I like it. I like change every now and again. But it did kind of shake me a little bit. Me and Dan both looked at each other like, what the hell's going on? You get used to this
there's
flow.
Also times... Well, I hear you.
Remember when the Chicago Bulls, with that music would come on, and the lights would come off, and then like you just knew it was game time? That's what your intro is for us. So when you changed it up a little bit, we went, whoa, what's going on? But then, everything falls into place, and we're back where we need to be.
We rarely take days off, so I've gotten out of the habit of really telling people, it's Tuesday, October 24th. They know when they tune in that they can count on us being there. We usually lump up our vacations all into like 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever, and so when we're back, we're back. But I don't know. Like I said, I just wanted to change things up. I've been working on some other stuff, so I logged in. I was basically sitting in my position here at the undisclosed location, and as I was finishing up some emails, I just kept looking at the clock, and I go, oh, wait a minute. Boom, I got to get in here. So that threw me off a bit. But yeah, I've been here. I've been ready to go. We have a couple guests. I know I lobbed one at you guys a little bit late there in the game. James Vick will join us, UFC lightweight. He's got a fight coming up at UFC 217. And, of course, Bryan Caraway will be in studio with us. In fact, what's the update on Bryan Caraway?
Bryan said he was going to be a little late, so I anticipated him being a little late. He had something to do at the Performance Institute, which I figured, because I think he was going to try and move it, and then I was like, no, that's kind of like a good topic for you to talk about when you get in. Because we're hearing about all these tests and stuff that people are doing. So I told him, just don't be too late. But, yeah, it's fine if you strolling a little late.
Yeah, no problems at all. It's a 2-hour show, so even if he comes in for 90 minutes, that'll work. So we have 2 guests coming your way. In fact, there's still a couple more that I've, extended the invite to. They've accepted. And then, of course, the next stage of that, of booking a guest, is just locking in the time. Many times I've already offered the time, they've already accepted. It's just a matter of them giving me that final, yeah, good to go, bro, or whatever. And then I toss it over to the editorial. Yeah. Hey, remind me about that, by the way. Got something going on there, guys.
Oh.
Let's see here. So, this first hour is pretty wide open. Whether you want to save your question for Bryan, if you have a question that's aimed to him specifically, or just in general to the professional athlete. That's the beauty of having these guests come into the studio. Some are professional fighters that fight in mixed martial arts, UFC, Bellator, PFL, wherever they're fighting. We love to have them in there so they can share their experiences, so they can add something to our show when we're discussing some of the latest news or some of the controversial topics that are out there, or just breaking down fights. Bryan will be there, so again, it can be directed towards him and his career, or just to a professional fighter in general. And, we'll throw out some topics, of course, stuff that's going on. Yes, outside of MMA, we do have the World Series starts tonight between the Los Angeles Dodgers as they host the Houston Astros. The Dodgers are a slight favorite for the series, and this will be the final 7 games if it takes that long. If not, maybe it'll get done in 4. I don't know, but after that, we put baseball to bed. Football season, I guess we can say we're about not halfway through the college season, but we still have about a third of the way to go with NFL, so that's always fun. English Premier League, we're down to talk about that. We're down to talk about anything. And, of course, there's some events that took place this past weekend and some happening this weekend that we can look forward to and preview. So whatever direction you want to take it in, do it. 866-522-2846 is the number to call in. Here's a matchup that got thrown our way here in the last 24 hours. Dan Hooker meets Mark Diakese at UFC 219 in Las Vegas. Now, that fight card, by the way, does not have an official main event as of yet, but I believe the UFC is working on pretty much that fight card and, putting that one to bed. Well, not to bed. Hasn't come and gone yet, but the actual putting of the fight card together, I believe that by this week all that will be settled, because they do have to have their offering of tickets, and when they do that, the main eventers, they kind of go on a little bit of a ticket press tour, or whatever you want to call it, and usually they do it around the 2-month mark. So I anticipate within another week or so that getting all locked up. Of course, there's rumors of maybe Cyborg fighting on that fight card versus Holly Holm. Stipe Miocic, if he can get things settled up, he could be on that fight card. I think that's the more unlikely of the two, honestly, but who knows? Maybe even Connie Mack and Tony Big Ferg. I don't know. We'll see. 866-522-2846 is the number to call in. Yeah, what's up?
Am I going to have to lock the door in the studio when Diakese's in the studio, or in the vicinity of Las Vegas?
Oh.
He's got beef with me, remember? He called me out that one time for picking against him.
Oh, did you predict against him? Is that what it was?
I did, but technically he lost, so, doesn't that get me off the hook?
It doesn't get you off the hook.
No?
I know this.
Yeah. He's actually one of my
well, we
favorite
got
fighters too. I just had to.
We got the
Had to keep it
Louisville
real.
baseball bat, and
Evil Slugger shot with the.
are we talking classes?
Awake, they're awake.
Okay.
That's Bryan Caraway. Bryan Caraway, we over there, and I asked
In a jab, he's gonna swing and a miss, and then
George Vick.
Well, tip us off, Brian. Where would you not like to get hit? Probably the knee, right?
yeah, but that'd be really hard to get a good swing.
You have to be like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber, right?
Yeah.
He just goes behind Jeff Daniels and whacks him.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. That'd be a good one. I don't know. If you swing for the head, you're most likely gonna hit somebody's arm or shoulder, and at best break their arm. But you're still gonna get choked.
I mean, it's gonna hurt, but really, is it that much
that's a
worse
good
than
idea.
you blocking like somebody's high kick? Like really, just them throwing it at you. That hurts too, man.
Yeah, that's true. It does. But I still think a baseball bat, so it's more dense.
Yeah.
So
We asked them.
All right,
interesting.
so-
I like it.
Brian, Goes was saying that you were, I guess you were at the UFC PI this morning. What was all that about? We made probe.
Yeah,
your
I just was getting my resting metabolic rate tested, and to see where how much my body's how many calories my body's expending throughout the day, just at rest, to kind of help tighten up my diet, my nutrition, to see how many calories I need to be getting, adjusting my macros, which are my fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, just so I can be running the most efficient and losing the most fat and retaining the most muscle.
Now, what they tell you? Did they say, "Wow, everything seems to be, everything seems to be doing well here"? Your test results, or did someone raise an eyebrow? You got to clean up the diet?
No, they said they actually thought I'm dieting too much. I'm eating too clean, not eating enough, not eating quite enough fats or actually enough calories in general. And so I just needed to actually chill out a little bit and eat some more fattening food. Not necessarily bad food, but I need to eat more, I guess, wholesome foods. I'm eating too many vegetables and lean meats and stuff. So
That's actually how this interview came about. They go, if you really want to get fat, let me send you over to MMA Radio. And I was like, hey, man, can I come in?
So yeah, that's good. We're getting things adjusted around. I just, so it can work the opposite actually. If you eat less calories and less fat, you actually, your body needs fat to burn fat. So sometimes if you try to go too much, your metabolism slows down. You actually lose less weight overall. So I just wanted to get in there and make sure, because I get too over analytical sometimes, and I try to go too hard, and it hurts me.
You've been doing this a really long time, so I'm sure some of these things that you hear, you've probably heard before, right? But how many times do experts like this at the UFC Performance Institute, like, just completely blow your mind with something where they say, you need to be doing this, and you go, what?
Not to sound arrogant or whatever, but probably never really, just because luckily, or fortunately, I guess, I was able to go to school for exercise physiology and kinesiology, and I minored in nutrition and athletic training. So I have a pretty extensive background in nutrition, and I've also been competing as a wrestler, which is also a weight management sport, since I was 11 years old, and competing in MMA for almost 14 years. I've basically by now I've heard it all from world-class nutritionists, and but there's a difference from knowing something and then adhering to it and sticking to it, and then also knowing too much where you end up trying to play a scientist too much. You're trying to adjust this, adjust that, instead of just staying solid and getting a good routine. I'm always trying to finicky and mess with stuff and do this and add this in, and then your body can't really stabilize. So that's my problem. I just get too much anxiety or over analytical, and I just need to lead things a certain way and be patient.
Can a fighter ever find the perfect recipe? Because we've asked this question before, and some fighters will say, if you're not constantly changing it, then it's just never going to work. Others are saying, I finally found the right way of how I like to do my camps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could find the right way, for sure. Everybody's body's different, So I agree with that. What works for one guy is not going to work for another necessarily. But I think once you found kind of what your body works well with, if you run well off of less carbs, or if you need a little bit more carbs, or whatever it might be, if you have a camp and you feel awesome and you feel amazing, and and you were doing a certain method, I think if you stick to that method, I mean, don't change what's not broken. If something's working really well, stay with it. The problem with me is I need to be more diligent on taking notes on what I do in my camps. I feel good, but I'm so tired and focused on what I'm doing that camp, I forget to write it down. So I've been slowly every camp writing some notes down. I just went back and pulled some stuff up, and that's why I wanted to go into the PI and get my my metabolic rate tested and things like that, to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Maybe like a camp journal or something?
Yeah, exactly. Cool, right? Yeah, it's I definitely need to do it. I know other guys do it, and it can be really beneficial, because there's a couple camps that I've had when I fought Wineland. Actually, that camp was probably the best I've ever felt physically, and I did probably the least amount of training that I've ever done in probably my whole entire, since I've been in the UFC, or since I've been a high-level professional. So just sometimes less is more, taking more time off. I replaced a lot of hard training on my body to more like circuit training, type training, things like that, a little bit more strength training, kind of eased off on some of the other sparring and grappling. And yeah, it was really beneficial. I felt great. My body was recovering a lot better. My diet was awesome. It was the most food I've ever eaten in any camp ever, and I lost the most weight and was the leanest I've been. So it kind of blows your mind, sometimes, not going so hard, less is more.
I want to segue into
which fight was that?
And that's George's question.
Hang on,
Go ahead, George.
Hang on, because I know you want to segue into another topic, but I'm just curious, what fight was that?
The fight where
felt great about.
Yeah, it was the Wineland fight. I felt really, really strong, really good about, and then the Aljamain fight I felt pretty solid as well. But yeah, that Wineland fight was probably where I felt overall the strongest. It was one of the first camps I've ever actually, implemented strength training, and just kind of not even high impact strength training, just some strength training. It made a really big difference. So then I continued that a little bit with the Aljamain fight. But yeah, so it's different because every opponent I have, my training changes a little bit with that. So it's kind of hard to find the balance, because you have different coaches telling you, for this opponent, we really want you training this stuff or this stuff, and you only have so many hours in a day or so much, energy that you can spend throughout that day. So trying to find time to fit that in. So that's the problem, is you have so many things that you want to do for a fight, but knowing what to throw away, everything's important, but knowing what's the most important is the difficult thing. So my camp looks a little bit different depending on my opponent. So I don't know. It just worked out really good for that camp for the Wineland fight.
All right, proceed with your segue.
Well, what I was going to bring up was I've never known you to be a creature of habit. You're always trying new stuff, and that kind of goes all over life. And you just basically, you were you too. You were in a different city for, I don't know how. For me, it felt like it was a month, but I think it was actually even longer. Tell us about your little world tour that you went on. Yeah, so
I hurt my shoulder. I was really bummed out. About not getting being able to fight the Jimmy Rivera fight. I just came off a big win, obviously you guys know, off Aljamain Sterling. I was really pumped to fight that fight. He was a top rising guy. I really believe a win over him at that time would have definitely put me right in title. Like I think I deserved a title shot, especially after I would beat Rivera. But I hurt my shoulder really bad. It was an ongoing injury that's been hurt for a long time, for many years, and it just took too much. It was just too much out of me, that fight camp, coming off the Aljamain fight. I heard it in the first round. You seen that I was kind of in a weird pretzel position. My shoulder's already hurt going into the fight really bad, and then that did more damage. It didn't really hurt during the fight, but afterwards I think it did more damage than I realized. And had to pull out of the Rivera fight, and I was just really depressed. So my good friend, as you all know, Dennis Superman Hallman, was over in India working with the Super Fight League over there, and my other buddy that I used to train with a long time ago, Clint Cezok, he was fighting. He was going to fight over there. He got kind of a last-minute fight. He was fighting in that tournament. It was like a month long. So I said, this is a perfect opportunity. I'm going to head to India and hang out with Dennis, see those guys, kind of get away. I've always wanted to kind of, I love traveling, see new countries. So I went there, and then next thing you know, I looked up tickets to Thailand, and they're $200. So I said, I'm going to fly to Thailand. I posted on my Facebook I was going to go to Thailand. One of my buddies from college said he'd lived there for 2 years, and he's like, hey man, it's perfect. I had perfect timing. I got 3 weeks open. I'll come out and show you the ropes for 3 weeks. So I spent 2 weeks in India. Then he flew out to Thailand, spent 3 weeks with me in Thailand, and then I stayed for another, I think, 10 days in Thailand. Then I went to Vietnam, bought a motor. Actually, I went to Cambodia after that. I stayed in Cambodia for 2 weeks. Then I flew to North Vietnam in Hanoi and bought a motorcycle, a Honda Win 110. And I traveled the entire country of Vietnam for 5 weeks. I went up to Sapa, which is in North Vietnam by China, way up in the mountains, like rice fields, rice terraces. Went up there. I stayed with a Vietnamese family for 2 days. They couldn't even speak English. It was freaking amazing.
That's what I wanted to get to. How did you meet them?
There's actually some tour guide people, and I just asked them, like, hey, is there a possibility that I could stay with like a traditional family? Like yeah, we do that. It's called a homestay. There's certain families that we can hook you up with and stuff. And so they put me in touch. Said, here's this. You'll go on our tour guide basically, and our tour guide, you go on this trip, and they'll take you a big tour all day long and on a hike, and they'll actually you'll hike into these people's house. And I didn't know how long the hike was going to be. They didn't tell us how long the hike was going to be. It ended up being almost a 14-mile hike, and I had my 60-pound backpack on. And because I was living out of my backpack, that's all I had for I was gone for 4.5 months, and so it was a 14-mile hike, but I was pretty exhausted. But it was fun once I got there.
One day?
Yeah, 14 miles all one. We left early. We got there at like 6 in the morning, and
how many miles did you get in before you went, hey, what the fuck? Like, when is this gonna be over?
Yeah, I don't know, probably 2 or 3. I was like, what the hell? I was like, oh, we got a long ways. I'm like, oh shit. So that was a pretty fun day. And then like I said, I continued riding. After that, I rode south all through down to Ho Chi Minh City in South Vietnam, Saigon. And it was a pretty awesome adventure. I just stopped in hostels and visited different parts of the country throughout the whole way. It was pretty unique riding a motorcycle, because at any point you could just see a mountain or see something off, and you just take a hard left and be cruising through some rice paddy fields and just getting lost in the jungle. And most people were like, aren't you crazy? Aren't you afraid of all this stuff? And the people there, after I was there for a few weeks, I realized that they were actually some of the nicest people out of any country that I've ever visited. Wow. So it was incredible, especially with the history that we have. I eventually started talking in a British accent just because I did. So I was like, I don't know if I want to be labeled as known as an American. But no, it was a great time. And then I went to Singapore for 2 days and coached at Evolve MMA for 2 days over there. Did a little seminar, and then. They were awesome. Evolve was great hosts. They're amazing people. Will at Evolve took care of me really, really well, and I can't wait to go back there. And then I traveled from there to Bali, Indonesia, and I traveled around Indonesia for 2 weeks. I was in Bali for, I think, 4 or 5 days, and then I went up to the Gili Islands, which is like north of Lombok, India, or in Indonesia. Was there for 3 or 4 days, and then I went to Lombok for a couple days, and then down to Nusa Penida, which is an island right off of Bali. So I visited a bunch of islands. I think I hit like 5 or 6 different islands in Indonesia. It was pretty rad. And then back home, and then I got home for a week or two, decided I was already bored, and so I left to Dominican Republic. One of my buddies from high school hit me up, and he was going on this trip to Dominican Republic for 11 days. So I jumped on that, went down there, came back, was home for about a month, and then I got another opportunity to go to the Cayman Islands with some other friends. So I went there for another almost 2 weeks at the Cayman Islands. And then I got back, and I still had the travel bug, and my shoulder was still not feeling very well. So I always wanted to go
Bryan,
to Sturgis.
If you say Colombia, I'm going to think you're a drug smoker. You're hitting some countries there where, I don't know, man. The Cayman Islands, I feel like you're washing money there, and you brought over some,
I wish I had some money to wash.
He's doing accents, right? What the hell's going on here?
Secret agent.
Yeah.
It was a great time. So basically the next month after that, all of August, I just did a bunch of Harley tours. I have a toy hauler from Grand Design RV. They hooked me up last year, and it's amazing. It's got an 18-foot garage. It's a whole nother story. It's ridiculous. So me, my buddy, and his dad, who just survived cancer, he rode Harleys growing up, forever, and he was dealing with cancer for the last 2 years, and he just kind of went into remission, was getting out of that. So we decided to take him and my best friend and head to Sturgis, because his dad goes to Sturgis every year, and I've never been. And yeah, one of our other buddies, actually, his dad was sadly murdered just a month before that, and his dad had a Harley and used to ride Harleys all the time, and his dad, left everything obviously to him, and so we took him and his dad's Harley, and it was kind of like this whole trip of my last hurrah before I got back into training, and my buddy's dad, surviving cancer, my other buddy's dad celebrating his father's life, and it was awesome. Went to Sturgis, went to Mount Rushmore, spread my buddy's dad's ashes at Mount Rushmore all over Sturgis, and then I got hooked on the biker rally. So I went from there. I went to Denver, and there was a biker rally actually in Loveland, Colorado, and then I flew out to Milwaukee, and I did the big Harley festival anniversary in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They have the Harley Museum out there, so I spent a week out there at the Harley Festival there. Awesome, all kinds of free bands, great music, a lot of really cool people. Got to see a lot of awesome motorcycles, and yeah, and then back here to the grind.
What was the sketchiest part of the whole trip involving humans and involving animals?
The sketchiest part, actually, funny story. So I was in Vietnam, and everywhere you go, I swear, it feels like every 100 yards there's like a little town. It's like never ending, where there's like little villages or towns, and the whole country, all they do is ride mopeds and scooters. Like, they hardly have any cars unless you're like a worker for like the country, like an industrial worker.
I feel like this is the theme of your trip, by the way.
Yeah. And well, hopefully it wasn't that boring, but anyway, so yeah, there's one stretch of Vietnam that we're going over the mountains that they didn't have any towns or any cities or anything, any mechanic shops. So we're like, oh man, we hope we don't break down during this. Well, sure enough, it's like 10, 11 o'clock at night. It's pouring rain, heading up this mountain, just past the last gas station, get probably 10 miles past it, and it's a rainstorm. My bike just all of a sudden just dies, just craps out, just breaks down. Luckily, I'm with one of my buddies, Tom, that I met in Cambodia a month before. And we started traveling a month. He's from England. He was riding with me. He bought a motorcycle. I talked him into coming with me. And so we were just stuck in the middle of just pouring thunder rain in the middle of a mountain, pitch black at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, thinking, what the heck am I going to do? So I got on his motorcycle. I rode back to the gas station. They didn't speak the only English word they knew was no. I don't even think they knew yes. They only knew no. They literally didn't know a single word. I've never met anybody that literally didn't know anything, any English. And so here I am trying to do what is the game? I'm trying to do like charades. Yeah, I'm trying to do charades to these guys, trying to show them. They're just laughing at me. I'm looking like a fool trying to do all this stuff. So finally I get them figured out, and I'm like tying ropes around, trying to show the motorcycle. Finally the guy follows me up, grabs him, gets the motorcycle. I tie the rope around. He starts pulling with his bike. All of a sudden, we just cut across traffic. It's raining in the middle of the dark. I almost got hit by like freaking 10 motorcycles or 10 scooters coming by. And then he starts pulling us down this dark, windy trail. And next thing you know, we're going faster and faster and faster. I'm like, dude, we're going way too fast to get pulled because the rope's not even tied right. He tied it on sideways. So I'm like, the bike's sliding sideways, and he's pulling me at diagonal. But luckily, I've rode motorcycles my whole life and raced motocross. So I'm like sliding. I'm trying to hit the horn, trying to yell at him. He's not listening. We're going through this dark, I think we're going to get killed. I'm like, dude, we're getting killed. We're going through in the middle of nowhere. My other buddy Tom's right next to me, where are we going? I'm like, I don't know, go up there and try to stop him. So he's trying to catch him, but the road is so narrow he couldn't get by me to try to get him. So I just lock up my brakes, and finally, after the guy is dragging me with my brakes locked up for probably 10 minutes, he finally looks back, and I'm trying to let go of the handlebars and try to wave him to slow down, but finally he gets stopped, and I'm like, man, you gotta slow down. I tell him slower, and so finally he slows down, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what we're to do now. We can't turn back now. Should we just leave the motorcycle in the middle of the jungle and just ride yours back, or what? It's only $300. And he's like, God, I don't know. I think I see some lights up there at the end. Let's just go a little bit further. We're already deep. So he pulls us down the road a little bit more, and all of a sudden we pop out on the road, and there's this little hut, and this guy has his garage door open in this little house, and there's probably 100 scooters or motorcycles outside, and the guys they're all sitting around the floor drinking wine in their garage, and we pull up and he was taking us to a mechanic, super cool. And they were just drunk as a skunk. This guy comes out, could barely walk. Trying to give me a hug right away. All this stuff. I start selling the motorcycle. He just grabs my motorcycle. Drunk, started looking at it. I'm like, oh man, all right, this is gonna be crazy. We're gonna be here all night. This guy's just super drunk, and they're just all the guys in the garage. His buddies are talking to Vietnamese, harassing us, but just laughing the whole time. I don't even know what they're saying, but they're pointing and laughing at us and making funny faces and funny gestures. And I'm like, what is going on? So the guy's wife comes out and gives us a little bit of honey lemon tea. We're like, oh, this is kind of nice, you know. Hopefully we don't get drugged. So we're drinking the honey lemon tea. Within probably 5 minutes, the guy, you know, holds up his finger, shows me to wait, holds up his hand, tells me to wait, goes inside, comes back out with a little teeny box, pulls out as a CDI box, and plugs in the bike, starts my bike up. Literally 10 minutes later.
He did that drunk?
Yeah, and I was like, what the heck, you know? And yeah, he was awesome, man. He like figured it out so fast. And what happened is my little CDI box kind of hung down and got too soaking wet from the rain because it kind of, the zip tie, I guess, wasn't zip tied right, and it broke down, you know, fell down and got too wet. And so, you know, I was asking the guy how much he owed me. He told me, and I like did the calculations, and you know, because he told me it was like 48,000 or 70,000 dong or something like that. So I'm doing the math, and I'm like, oh man, that's $3.50. I was like, what the heck? So I gave the guy 10, you know, what it was equivalent to 10 American dollars. Dude, he gave me the biggest hug ever, and like like started tearing up, almost crying. Just gave me a hug for like, I felt like freaking an hour. Just giving me a hug the whole time, like just so happy. He grabs my hand, raised it like I'm the champion. And all of his guys like, oh, they come over, give me a shot of like rice wine, take a shot, and then off we were on our way going again.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
That's
Rice
crazy.
wine.
I was actually going to ask you if you had any trouble with bikes. My cousin, who was a pilot, was like, when he graduated, he's like, you know what, I'm going to go get lost. 2 weeks on a. He only did 2 weeks on a bike in Vietnam, but he was on one of those random pathways you were talking about. He hit a rock, went flying, messed up the whole right side of his body, and had to walk his bike probably about 10 miles or so, stay overnight because they didn't have a mechanic. They didn't speak good English, kind of similar, except they didn't bring him to a mechanic. They brought some really random mechanic to him the next day.
Oh.
Anyways, but that's funny. I was going to say, it was like, any bike problems while you're out there? And sure enough, that was a crazy story, man.
Yeah. You know, we had a couple little problems. Like I had to put a new chain and sprocket on it. You know, a couple little things here and there. My starter started messing up, so there's something in there that they had to take apart and fix. I put a new clutch cable on.
Wow.
A couple little things, but I mean, it was all so cheap there. You know, all that was like
It's crazy.
$30.
That's
You
the
know,
best.
to have all this stuff is so cheap is just unreal. But another crazy story is that my first day on the road, I forgot about this. My first day on the bike. That I got, it was pouring rain again, and it didn't actually rain almost the whole time. It was only rained a few times, but the first day we decided to leave on our adventure, it was raining so hard there's probably a standing, you know, 12 inches of water on the road, and it was in Hanoi, so the traffic there was just absolutely insane. I mean, you're like handlebar to handlebar, so we're going down this kind of bypass highway, and there's packed handlebar to handlebar, and we're doing probably 30 miles an hour, and this scooter, like, we're kind of shuffling. Well, there's kind of a pathway open, so I started taking off. Well, the scooter came by, flying by me, and if anybody's ever seen like anything or been to Vietnam, they carry giant things. Like I saw this guy carrying a wash machine and dryer on a scooter, stacked on top of a wash machine and dryer on a scooter, on a scooter rather. And they'll carry things that are like 10 feet wide, like there is no like caution extra wide though. This guy was carrying like some bamboo or trees that were super wide off a scooter. Well, he passed me. Well, then when he cut in front of me, the bamboo or whatever caught my handlebars. And we're in like mass traffic. I'm only doing 30, 35. So it rips my handlebars in my hand. I go down. I'm hydroplaning for probably 100 feet in the water, just hydroplaning forever. Well, my buddy was behind me, and like this garbage truck type thing, or it was like one of their version of like kind of a small garbage truck or semi truck, missed my head probably by a foot. Missed running over my head by probably a foot. All these cars just split and barely. I mean, I got hit almost like I had a bike run over my leg. Like so many people almost hit me.
When you hydroplaned, was it on your bike or just your body was hydroplaned?
No, my body was hydroplaned. Like I went sideways down in my body because the water was so high. I mean, think if you're doing 30 miles an hour and you land in, you know, a foot of water. Like I just was skipping across water
like a rock.
Yeah, I was just sliding, and I got up and there's all these cars are going by me. I pick up my bike, try to get out of the traffic. Luckily, I had wrecked right by like a metal shop, like a metal building shop, like I don't know, like an industrial shop. They all ran over, grabbed my bike. My handlebars were bent. My peg was bent all up on the left side. Within, you know, probably 20 minutes, that everything all bent back. They took out a little torch, heated up the metal, bent my peg back straight, fixed my handlebars, fixed everything up for me, and was like, oh, you know, you're on your way. So I gave them like $2 or $3. They were super stoked.
What about you though?
Awesome.
You hydroplaned for 100.
Yeah, luckily I would have been like, you know, I think if it was dry, I would have been a lot more messed up. But you know, since it was raining, I had my raincoat on. You know, I had my rain slicks on, so I didn't have anything. It tore my rain cover off, my rain cover, and I had a bruise on my ankle from where like the bike kind of landed on me when I went down. But other than that, I was completely fine. Hopped up and was off in the next 20 minutes.
Damn, that's insane.
crazy stuff happening out there in Vietnam. All right.
There's a few other pretty wild ones, but it was a good time. It was worth it.
Let's take a break. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM Rush 93. In studio today is UFC bantamweight Bryan Caraway. Now, Bryan does have a fight coming up, so we'll touch on that at some point here. He will be fighting at UFC Fight Night 123 versus Luke Sanders, and that's on December 9th. So we're about 6 weeks out from that encounter. All right, folks, stay close. We'll be right back. It's MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM Rush 93.
Charm, compassion, common sense. These guys have none of that. You listen to them, so you're no better. I am awesome, though. They are Gorgeous George and Goes.
Tonight at 10 Eastern, the Vegas Golden Knights take on the Chicago Blackhawks. Hear the game on SiriusXM NHS radio, Channel 91, and on your phone with the SiriusXM app. The same SiriusXM app that's available on tablets and your mobile devices houses the MMA Junkie radio show, which is uploaded just minutes after the show ends. So if you missed any part of the show, you can catch it in HD quality and commercial free. Today we're joined by Bryan Caraway, who is going to be fighting on December 9th versus Luke Sanders. This fight takes place in Fresno, California. And of course, Bryan has been a ranked bantamweight for a while now. Now we are about over a year removed from your last fight, Bryan. So by the time you fight, it will be 18 months.
Yeah.
How do you feel like the division is now as compared to how you left it? Other than the obvious, a different champion and all that, but you're standing amongst the best 35ers out there. Where do you think you fit?
Yeah, I think the top guys that were above me are still the top guys. There hasn't really changed in that retrospect. I mean, they kind of juggled around a little bit, but the dudes before I got injured are still there. You have Rivera up there still, Dominic, Dillashaw. Garbrandt's the new guy who obviously popped up in the mix. Winning the world title, but everybody else is pretty much the same. They had a new addition of Marlon Moraes, and that dude's tough. I think he's only ranked like 10th or 11th, but he's definitely, I don't know who hasn't ranked there. He's definitely underrated. If you watch the Sun Sao fight, that Sun Sao's ranked, I think 3rd or 4th right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people argue that Marlon beat him. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how can you be ranked 10th when you beat a guy like arguably could have beat a guy like Sun Sao who's got to win over Dillashaw, who I think at one point he won 8 fights straight and still didn't get a title shot. UFC says because he's been injured. I don't know that case or whatnot, but and then he comes back and he's still winning. So yeah, the division's tough, man. The 135-pound division's on fire. And, it's exciting right now. There's a lot of contenders, a lot of people who can win the belt any given day, whoever brings their A game. I feel like that I'm definitely in that top mix there. I think on any given day, I can definitely beat any of those guys. I can take down and submit and choke or beat up any of those dudes. And I can't wait until I get my opportunity. And but first I got to get through this next fight. Luke Sanders, I'm not taking him lightly. He's a very tough, scrappy guy, good conditioning, strong. He's got a really good work ethic, and he seems to be pretty talented. So I'm stoked to battle with him. Little bummed that I'm not fighting a ranked guy. Since I've been ranked for a long time, I really wanted to fight that John Lineker fight really bad. I was pushing hard for that. Lineker was ranked 5, I was ranked 6. We both didn't have fights, both needed fights, and he was publicly agreeing to fight me. Although I do know his management, and they said, hey, we'll fight you. They're like, to be honest, we really don't like the matchup as much. We'd rather fight another guy's strikers. Obviously John's a striker and got good power, so they're like, we don't really like the matchup against you. You're kind of a big 135-pounder. And basically what they're saying is I'm going to take him down and beat him up and choke him. So I don't know if that's why, on their end, the UFC didn't match that fight, because they were saying, yeah, we'll take it. And then behind closed doors, they're saying, nah, we really don't, can we pass on that? So I'm bummed I didn't get, a top fight. Everybody else I think at that time was actually booked. So everybody I think in almost the whole top 10 division either was hurt or had a fight. So yeah, so I'm fighting Luke Sanders.
Now, he's represented by Alex Davis. Was it Alex that was telling you this, or one of the coaches, or just someone?
Yeah, I've been friends with Alex
I've
been friends with Alex for a long time. Not to throw him under the bus or anything, but I mean, I'm friends with him, and he even said, we're friends with you. We don't really want to fight you. We know you. We're friends with you guys, but this is the fight game. We'll fight you for sure. He's like, we'll fight you if that's what comes down to it, but we'd rather not. And he's like, if you really need the fight, John needs a fight too. He's got a lot of kids. He's like, we'll make it happen, but preferably we'd rather not fight that fight. You're our friend. And that's kind of how it went, but I think most people know what that means.
And so Luke Sanders was basically, since everybody else was tied up, that's why you took the matchup.
Yeah, you know,
Is that what it boils down to?
yeah, they just, you know, they offered me that, and I wanted to get back in there. I wanted to fight, and I've been itching to fight. You know, it's been, like I said, this is the longest layoff I've ever had since I've been competing since 11 years old. Because since I was 11 years old, every single year I would compete in wrestling, wrestle, I'd race dirt bikes, play other sports, and so I'd have at least a season that I competed. And this 18 months, or now it's been, I think, 14, 15, 16 months, I haven't competed in that entire time. So this is the longest break that I've not been, you know, competing for that many years. So it's been interesting. My weight definitely blew up a lot more than than I expected. You know, I was being gone for a long time, not keeping yourself in check with a scale. Got a little crazy, but you know, I'm on a great nutrition plan, and I'm working my butt off, and you know, everything's clicking and going well so far. So.
The shoulder injury, was that anything that required surgery? Were you able to kind of get over that with this time?
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna have to get surgery. You know, I took all this time off, and I thought it was gonna, you know, do some good, and it didn't. I came back, my shoulder was worse than when I left, but I started seeing the new physical therapist at the PI center this summer, and man, within, you know, a week I did I think 4 or 5 sessions straight with her. Just a week of doing mobility and stretching, and you know, kind of re-loosening up certain muscles. My shoulders never felt, I mean, it's still really weak, but I'm doing strength conditioning every day. It's never felt this good probably in the last 6 years. Just everything was so anteriorly rotated on my body, my shoulder, that it was pulling, you know, I have a torn labrum. It was pulling my humerus head out of my labrum socket because my labrum wasn't there to hold it in. So my rotator cuff muscles were so tight, like I said, anteriorly. My pec muscles, my pectoralis major, everything was pulling forward, and I was displacing my shoulder. So I was getting a lot of pain and a lot of impingement because my humerus wasn't set in the proper space. So now that she's loosening a lot of my front muscles up and everything, and working on strengthening my back muscles to kind of get my proper posture back, it's relieved so much, like an incredible amount of pressure off of my shoulders, and you know, it was just basically like a posture and a structural problem. Granted, I do have a band cart and a slap tear in my labrum, and my bicep was partially torn when I got an MRI back, you know, back last year. But I think now I need to go back in and get another one because it feels a lot stronger. You know, I've been doing rehab. I think I've strengthened that bicep muscle back up, and I think that tendon's kind of started adhering and growing a little bit, and yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll.
We have to take one more break, but before, I want to leave you with a question to think about during the break, because you said something that was very interesting. You said you don't want to take Luke Sanders lightly at all, and maybe you can keep it 100 with us, because in life, I think we all at some point have taken something lightly. Can you remember any time in your career where maybe you have taken someone lightly and it worked out in your favor, or maybe it didn't? Because that stuff like that can kind of become addicting in life, right? If you get away with it, then you do it again. But fighters are always going to tell us, hey, man, I take everyone seriously. Then later on we hear, maybe I didn't. So think about that during the break,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
All right, folks, you're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM Rush 93. We'll also be taking some calls, 866-522-2846. I believe somebody's calling in from the Couve, so we'll get to that person when we come back.
to link into the MMA Junkie Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter.com at MMA Junkie Radio. This is MMA Junkie Radio. Here are your hosts, Gorgeous George and Goes.
All right. Goes had a question for Bryan Caraway. And we also have a caller from Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken, right, Danny?
That's right.
All right, I want to make sure we hit all these, plus MMA history today. We think we may have slipped up on yesterday and not brought that one forward, so we'll see if we can get to a few of these things here. It's Tuesday, October 24th, and we invite you to call in, 866-522-2846. Bryan's co-hosting with us for the entire show. We will have one other guest in the second hour, James Vick, UFC lightweight, who has a fight coming up at UFC 217 in New York on November 4th versus Joseph Duffy. So we'll chat with him for about 10 minutes. So let's take the call from Vancouver. Chris from Vancouver, what's on your mind?
Oh, hey, Bryan, how are you?
Good. What's up, brother?
Not too much. I was actually going to ask, my original question was if you're disappointed to have an unranked opponent, but you already answered that. I'm actually kind of a tough guy myself around my town, so I kind of know what it's like to be a tough guy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was curious, is it a good idea to be, mentioned you have to get shoulder surgery?
Eventually, yeah. Eventually I'm going to have to get the surgery.
Is it a good idea to be, like, it seems, I've not really heard fighters talking about an injury that they have to get resolved before a fight. Do you know what I'm saying? It seems almost like it gives you an out if you lose now.
No, I don't make excuses. I'm going to show up and train as hard as I can. It is what it is. Like, if I lose, it's because the guy's better than me. It has nothing to do with my shoulder. I wouldn't take a fight if I wasn't able to compete, and feel like I can compete at a high level. So ever since I've been started training at the PI and the new physical therapist, my shoulder's been feeling great. If it was still feeling the way it was before, I wouldn't have took the fight. I would have went ahead and got surgery. But I feel, and with the concluding talking to my doctors, they told me that if it's not painful, like really painful, and it's just a little bit of a weak strength issue, then put off surgery, because a lot of times, sometimes the surgery can really inhibit overall movement. It can really end up being a lot of times worse off. So I'm not having pain right now. It's a little weak, but I'm strengthening that, and it's getting stronger every day. So I don't feel like it's going to be an issue.
Thanks for the call, Chris from Vancouver. And folks in Vancouver, careful now, careful out there. That's a tough guy out there, so you don't want to get on Chris's bad side. Also, let me piggyback his question. Not so much what he was saying about excuse, but what about the fact that you may be tipping your hand as far as like where a certain part of your body just may not be 100% to your challenger,
Yeah, well, good luck, man. Good luck with that. First of all, it's a 50-50 shot. You don't know if it's my left shoulder or my right shoulder. And second of all, like I said, what is he going to do? Punch me in my shoulder? The only thing is you try to hammer lock me or try to attack that arm with submissions. But like I said, good luck. I don't plan on getting myself in bad positions for that anyway. Whether my arm's strong or not strong, I don't put myself in those positions. And if they were able to get there, then good for them. They're skillful. So hats off to them if they're able to get to that.
Gotcha. If it was like, if you had another type of injury, like soft tissue in your nose, is that one where you would maybe keep that closer to your chest?
Yeah, if it was like
or
a knee.
Are you just pretty open about yours?
No, if it was like a knee injury, maybe something that affects my mobility, moving on my feet, or somewhere where they can leg kick it, somewhere that's easier to attack, but it's really hard to attack your shoulder. You know what I mean? If it's something else easier to attack, then yeah, I would, I'd probably keep it closer to home. But I think everybody's known I've had a shoulder injury for quite some time. So it's really no secret. People want to know and disclose why I pulled out of fights, and so I said, I hurt my shoulder back in wrestling when I was in college, and I'd kind of take some time off. It'd slowly heal up, but then the injury would still be there. It wouldn't be necessarily an open wound, so it wouldn't be hurting.
Bryan, let me jump in here real fast. The first hour is almost up, and we'll be right back in a few minutes with Bryan Caraway.
with white lipstick and one thing on their mind. Hey, little freak with the lunch pail purse. Underneath the paint, you're just a little girl dancing at the zombie zoo.
That's pretty good.
Dancing at the zombie zoo. Painted in a corner, and all you wanna do is dance at the zombie zoo.
All right, here we go. It's the second hour of the MMA Junkie Radio Show. I want to give some shout-outs from the Facebook chat to Kate Trombley, a.k.a. Cupcake Katie, from the Boston area. Marcus Ling, he is also in our chat. Cracking jokes. Miguel Valdez Jr., Ana Claudia Guedes. Oh, I know Ana Claudia. Rodolfo Carrion, and Hard Knocks. All right, folks. We're continuing on here with Bryan Caraway, who's in studio with us. UFC Bantamweight. He signed on to fight Luke Sanders December 9th, UFC Fight Night 123. Bryan, I felt like I cut you off, sorry, in the last hour, and I just want to let you finish in case you wanted to add anything to the whole injury talk. You know, you don't seem too concerned because it's the shoulder, but you said maybe if it was a knee or maybe some sort of facial damage, that's where maybe you'd be a little bit more discreet.
Yeah, definitely. Somewhere they could, they can attack, I guess, more easily or try to exploit easier.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny because two things, and then I know Goes had a question for you earlier on as well. Frank Mir, I bring this up about once a year. Frank Mir, like back in 2008, he had people felt like they had spies in the camp, and that he had an injury. And I'm not sure if it was the Nogueira fight or Chikongo or what. But it was funny because at first he was going to speak up and say, what the hell? Why are people from my camp saying anything? But it turns out the injury, just like you said, they didn't know exactly what side it was, and they didn't have, and so he actually wound up not necessarily faking it. It's just when they brought it up, when people brought it up to him, he would definitely talk about it. And I think it was either an older injury that he had gotten over or just a fake injury, but he just played along with it the whole time, I guess, maybe giving a little false sense of security to the opponent, but in reality he was 100% ready to go. And I wondered when the mixed martial arts game would kind of go and work off that. You know, in baseball, it's no secret, baseball clubs try to steal the signs of, future opponents. We've seen that in football, of course. You know, there's been accusations, towards the Patriots, them doing that as well. But, as far as like spies and injury talk, I always wondered why, I guess, it wasn't more prevalent.
Hey, I think if you're a professional athlete, like or a professional fighter, and your game plan, or you're even trying to base any of your game plan of winning off of someone else's injury, you're sorely putting time and energy into the wrong spot. You know what I mean? If you're counting that as an edge, that's like, a lot of fighters make the biggest mistake of saying, well, I'm going to gas this guy out. My game plan is to get him tired. Okay?
Right.
You can't count on somebody getting tired, because if they don't get tired, you don't know what they're doing, their conditioning, their training. Maybe you can hope to say, okay, well, this person's got tired in the past, so I'm going to push my pace, and if they get tired, then then they get tired, and it's going to go easier. But you can't base your game plan saying, well, I'm only going to win, if they're tired, or I'm only going to win, I need to exploit this. You keep in the back of your mind there, but you shouldn't really spend too much time on expecting someone not to be working hard, expecting someone to be injured as much as you think they are. You know what I mean? I think that's just a bad idea and a bad game plan.
No, those are great points, because that might be the previous fight might be where that person all of a sudden took their conditioning to another level, and like you said, next thing you know, you're running into a bull who's strong for 15 or 25 minutes or whatever you signed up for. No, that's a great answer. Also, one last thing, I always crack up how in the NFL, I mean, the teams can get fined heavily if they don't disclose all the injuries, because same thing, these teams want to hang on to certain injuries. You don't want an opposing team's offense to know that you have cornerbacks that are little gimpy, they're running slow, they got injuries in their ankles or knees because you might throw at them or whatever. But in the NFL, man, they want full disclosure, otherwise it's big time fine. So it's funny how sometimes sports can be so much alike or somewhat or so much different. All right, Goes, you had a question for Bryan. before. I think it was one of the breaks there.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you should re-ask it and see if we can answer it for you.
All right, so my question was, in life, just anyone, you don't have to be a professional athlete, but there's been times where you're just good at something, and you just kind of take it for granted, and sometimes you don't put in the camp that you need to for whatever it is you need to do, whether it's a presentation or something like that, right? We've all done it with tests, right? You study your ass off, and you get a good grade, but then one day you don't study, you get a good grade, and you go, wait a minute. Have you ever done that as a fighter? I mean, have you ever taken someone lightly, and has it worked out?
You know, as most hardcore MMA fans would know, I struggled for a long time with performance anxiety. Worrying about, like, am I going to be ready enough? Am I going to make a mistake? Am I going to perform well? Am I going to perform up to the ability that everybody thinks I can perform to? Or am I going to perform to what I know I can do? And because of that and that nervousness and anxiety, I don't think I could honestly say that I don't think I've ever really taken anybody lightly because of that factor, because I'm always just so hyper aware of everything, and like I said, I have anxiety on it. So I if anything, I think I've overtrained for quite a few fights. The one name being is the Sunsal fight. That's the hardest fight I've ever trained for in my life, and I think I just way overdid it for that fight. I was just exhausted physically and mentally the whole camp, just pushing myself to, way further than I needed, past where it was not wasn't positive anymore. But there's been times in fights that I wasn't underestimating the guy, but during the fight I've gotten a little confident, a little too over cocky. For example, I fought John Gunnarsson on a day's notice. It was barely even 24 hours. I got the call at like midnight, and the fight was like the next day.
Damn.
Like I had to weigh in that morning. It was ridiculous. But I was walking around. I was walking around like 152. Gunnarsson was cutting from like 76. I didn't really want to, but like all my friends were like, come on. I'm like, so I ended up taking the fight, and I was nervous there. Showed up. Started doing really well in the fight. I ended up taking him down, got a scramble, drug, took his back, was beating him up, doing really good, and I got too cocky. I got his back and the leg right in, so I tried to roll for like a rolling calf crunch. Like, he got in a scramble and ended up catching me in an armbar, and he was a big, strong guy. I was like walking around, like I said, eating whatever I wanted at 150 pounds, and he got a little armbar, and I quite couldn't stack him. I had him stacked for a while, but eventually I just, he was a strong guy and was able to, outlast me, his endurance, or just outstrength me, and was able to straighten my arm, and break my grip, and I ended up losing that fight. And I think I was in a really solid position to end up dominating the round and possibly choking him, but I got a little fancy, tried to go for a fancy move, and got out of position, and then, I think that cost me the fight. But I don't think I really underestimate most people. This game is too it's not like you have one tool like boxing where the better fighter usually wins. There's too many tools. There's too many variables in there for somebody to win. There's guys I've seen in, the old school Benji Raddick thing where he fought a guy who was a street fighter. The guy closes his eyes and throws a haymaker and knocks him out. And Benji's one of the top guy fighters in the world. So there's the X factor in MMA. So I never take that lightly at all. This is my job, my livelihood, and it's my passion. I want to be a world champion, so I can't take anybody lightly.
Physically and mentally, people don't realize how much that mental game plays. And when you hear something like that, like let's say you hear stories of other camps trying to get information on you, like the shoulder, right? Does that almost like make you salivate, going, if he's looking for shit like that, then he's hurting, as opposed to me, who I'm just trying to figure out how to beat this guy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I knew he was trying to look for that, and then he's trying to find, he's a little bit nervous, I think, a little bit worried. He's trying to find, trying to feed off something that really shouldn't be mattering. Like, if you're not a very confident person, you'd be trying to look for an easy out like that. You know what I mean? So instead of going on there, I don't think Luke is going to even be thinking twice about that. I think he comes from, he's training with a good camp at the sports lab or the MMA lab. I don't think that would even cross their mind on that. I know he's going to be a really tough competitor. I think he was a state champion in high school. I know he's done those strongman competitions, so he's going to be in good shape. And, let's be honest, he's in the UFC. He put a whooping on Yuri Alcantara before he got caught and submitted, and I think that was a little bit, like I said, a little bit case of overconfidence by him during the fight. Probably not before. He was whooping Yuri pretty bad, and I think if Yuri would have rolled for that knee bar explosively, he would have defended it. But I think it was because it was kind of nonchalant, kind of like was getting beat up and kind of rolled in the position. He was like, "Oh crap!" I think he just was overconfident in the fight because he was to be honest, he was dominating. So.
Well, I have some thoughts on Luke Sanders. Before I get to those thoughts, I just wanted to adjust on Chris's call back before the segment was, and I'm glad actually George dived into asking you about, why you're so comfortable with that. But as far as the excuses part, I guess is what I wanted to address, and it kind of comes funny because again, I'm an Extreme Couture guy, and I've known Bryan, from there. That's no secret. So I don't want to, come like I'm coming to bat, biasly here or anything. But what I will say is, for anything you could say about pulling out an injury or this or that, there have been plenty of fights, win and loss, tough guys. Fights where people were, odds makers were making you a 3.5 to 1 underdog against Aljamain Sterling, where you weren't healthy, and you're not 100%. You take these fights, and you don't have to, get into it, but there is that side of it too. So that observation or criticism, or can go both ways. And I don't think a lot of people, not just for you, Bryan, but defending all fighters, when we want to criticize fighters, I think you need to stop and realize whether they're pulling out for injury or not. Like, these guys aren't taking fights at their healthiest in the first place. So I think the criticism should be tempered in that regard. But about Luke Sanders, man, I was going to ask you, does it motivate you, the fact that his prototype? Because when you look at the fight you really wanted, Jimmy Rivera, or even beyond Jimmy Rivera, let's look at T.J. Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt, those top guys. These are wrestling-based guys who can strike. They're not really known for their submissions, not that they can't do them, but they're mainly wrestling-based guys that can strike. And then you have Luke Sanders, a guy who can wrestle, scramble. He also has a really good left hook, which is, you're a guy you wanted to fight, Jimmy Rivera, one of his best shots. There's a lot of similarities here. Do you like that about the matchup?
Yeah, I don't really, I haven't really looked into that much. You know what I mean? I'm focusing, mostly on myself and, getting myself prepared, because I feel like when I'm prepared and mentally sound, I can beat anybody in the world. Yes, it's my coach's job to really break down what he's doing and what strengths, and his weaknesses to my strengths, and they, Coach Falls implements that into my game at our practice. It's not really my job. That's the coaching job, the head coaching job. I watch a little bit of tape from him, and I watch a little tape, and, I understand he's a tough guy. He's in the UFC, and, he's successful. I think he's the RFA champ at one point, and or before he came to the UFC. So, I don't really think about that too much. I leave that up to my coaches.
And Follis is a great coach to leave it up to.
Yeah.
Bryan, I did want to ask you a question going back to the shoulder surgery, but I do want to give a couple shout-outs now on the YouTube chat. Don Piccolo, John Rico, Marcel Woodard. That's the A squad right there. How about a shout-out to the Geek squad, Jason Carson, and not even a show. All right, so as far as the shoulder surgery goes, Bryan, I just recently had a serious injury followed by a surgery, so that's why I'm not in studio. But I was scared to death. I'm just going to put it right out there. I just did not want to go under. It wasn't so much the rehab. It sucks. It was just going under. How about as far as you go? Is there a certain fear that comes with the surgery, either going under or the rehab, or I guess because I know you've told us this a few times, you've kind of put it off. I just wanted to zero in on why maybe at the end of the day you haven't done it.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I am absolutely been afraid to go get surgery on, for a plethora of reasons. All of the above. I'm worried about, even though I would end up being out for this long time, I'm worried about being out for a long time and then coming back and having it hurt worse. I've talked to people where it was a 50-50 case where they've actually got surgery, they came back and they were worse. And then I've talked to people where they came back and they were a lot better. So I think that scares me. Man, I don't know. It's not, it's hurting. It's, hurting a little bit now, and, it's kind of weak, but I can still train. I can still function. Now I'm getting rehab on it. The pain's, really, mostly subsided. So I'm afraid on that aspect of, what if I do get the surgery, I'm out this long, I come back and I'm even worse. You know what I mean? And maybe that's just being a negative Nancy on it. But, also that whole time out, I'm not going to be able to do absolutely, can't do anything. I can't train. I can't ride my dirt bike. I can't do anything. And I know, there's got to be sacrifices for, great rewards of having a healthy shoulder. But, I guess I didn't ever mentally think in my head that my shoulder is that bad. Maybe it is impeding me to being 100%, but I'm still competing at a high level with it. And now that I got this, a new physical therapist at the PI, they've been doing wonders with it. So, my doctor even said, hey, if it's manageable and you're still training at a high level and it's not affecting you, noticeably affecting you, then I'd put off the surgery. So.
Now, another thing I want to ask you about is, you're 33 years old, and obviously you're in the midst of what we call a run. Now, you've had a couple slowdowns because of, like you said, the injuries, personal stuff, whatever. But the one thing that I've always heard from others, as far as like whether you're a training partner or a coach, is you can obviously teach submissions, catch wrestling. You have a unique style. Do you think in the future you would do that, and could you be like one of those guys that's kind of in high demand, kind of like how Neil Melanson is, where a lot of guys travel to him or base their camps just around him as well? Have you ever even thought of that yet, or are you still focused on just your career?
I'm mostly focused on just fighting, but I do absolutely love coaching. I coach a lot at Extreme Couture or any of the teams that I train at. I coach and do a lot of coaching with other fighters on our fight team. Sometimes I'll coach the pro practice, help out. I coach with a lot of the upcoming guys, or I'll even jump into just a regular submission wrestling class and kind of help out with that. I love coaching. I think it makes me a better fighter. It keeps my mind sharp. It keeps keeps me questioning techniques and improving techniques, and it makes sure that I mind my P's and Q's. I make sure sometimes I'll be missing something against some high-level guys in practice. I used to be hitting a lot, and I'll be missing some little thing, and then I'll come to practice, and as I'm breaking down what I'm teaching, I'm like, I'll reteach myself again, like, oh, man, I'm forgetting this little step. It's so small, but it's so crucial, and then I'll go back to practice, and I'll kill everybody with that one little teeny piece, because when I systematically break it down, I break it down, slowly, but when you're doing it live, sometimes you skip things. So I think it makes me a better fighter and athlete. As far as being a coach afterwards, I think, I would love that. I love coaching. I love helping other athletes out. But, to be able to be all of a sudden super popular like Neil or Ricky, I think it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like becoming popular as a fighter on Instagram. Some fighters are world champions and they have 100,000 followers, and some people are not even world champions and they have 500,000 followers. So I think it just takes kind of a certain character. It just, you got to kind of be that fat. You got to be kind of the right place, right time, maybe the right personality. You got to have the right people to back you. A little bit of you just got to be fortunate, to become really popular. Because I know a lot of great coaches that are absolutely incredible that have that are not known at all, and then I've trained with some other coaches that have a huge following that are like, so I think that's just kind of interesting thing.
Well, you know what? I know you don't want to name any of the ones that are but how about the ones that don't have much of a name and are solid? Give them a shout out.
Well, first of all, Coach Fallis, Robert Fallis, he's actually growing now, but he's been around for a long time. I mean, he coached Randy cornering him all his world titles. That guy is, I think, one of the most underrated coaches, by far in the game. He's absolutely phenomenal. He's a phenomenal motivator. He's a phenomenal, even just as a life coach. He's a great life coach. And, he taught me a lesson, when I've been coaching, I coached Misha for, 10 years of her career. And, or I should say, since I've taught from Coach Fallis, I was teaching Misha for probably 8 years of her career, and I didn't really start learning what the difference between a teacher and a coach is. A teacher is somebody who can teach you techniques and be a technician and regurgitate or come up and be innovative and teach you movements. They can teach you kinesiology movements. They can teach you techniques. But a coach is somebody who can read your emotions, can read your thought process, can read what you're strong at, can see that, like, this person's stronger at this person's stronger if they get pushed here, this person's stronger if you pull back. And then they can also read, like, okay, these techniques are good for this person. They're not like a cookie cutter saying, well, this technique is how you should do for everybody. A coach is somebody who can really get in sync with, your mind, body, and soul of the fighter, knowing when to push and pull back. And that's the huge difference that I learned from Coach Fallis, that I'm taking with me as growing into a coach and being more of a coach, and also more of as a fighter, is learning that emotional mental connection and understanding is higher and more important than absolutely anything else physical.
Bryan Caraway, UFC Bantamweight, our guest co-host here for the day. You can call in and we can chat about MMA news, or if you have a question for Bryan, do it. 866-522-2846. Quick shout out to the Angry Cajun, Chris LeMay, in our YouTube chat, as well as Knuckle Up 101. Bryan, going back to Vietnam, Southeast Asia, I think Goes had a question as far as any close encounters with either people or the jungle itself. Any snakes or scorpions, or how was that part of your trek?
It was pretty good. Nothing too crazy, I don't think, as far as animal wise. Maybe a couple jellyfish.
Not the box one, is it?
Yeah, no,
the box jellyfish from Australia. He's dangerous.
Yeah, no, I didn't see him. Just normal jellyfish. I think I saw. What else did I see? Not too many animals. Monkeys. those are actually probably the worst thing that I think about it. Those little guys they steal everybody's stuff, man. I don't know how much stuff I saw get stolen. People's glasses, hats, wallets, bags, backpacks. They're just a bunch of little thugs, man. They just roll deep and they punk people, man. They'd come up to these poor little Asian girls and just growl at them. The girls would just drop all their stuff and then just go over and take their food. I watched a monkey in Cambodia walk up to this little kid. He's eating at this little table. He walks up, like climbs on his lap. The little kid's just freezing, like starts crying. The monkey just comes, grabs his grapes off his table, grabs his food, his little snacks, just starts eating in front of him, takes it off and runs away. The little kid's like, I'm like, dude, he just punked that little kid, just took all of his food, man.
What happens if you stand off against a monkey? Is he gonna fight or?
Oh man,
what's his deal?
It depends. A lot of them, if you stand up to them and try to kick at them, they'll run away. But there's a couple of them that I climbed Mount Batur in Bali, Indonesia. It's a volcano, active volcano. I went there at like midnight or 11 o'clock at night, hiked all through the night to watch the sunrise over Lake Batur and see the ocean. It was incredible. But there's so many monkeys up there just stealing everybody's. There's this one in particular monkey that was huge. He's definitely alpha male. He's like 4 times the size of everybody else, and he was trying to take someone's backpack, and I went to run up on him like I was gonna kick him, and he like tried to grab my leg. He's like showing his teeth, and he tried to come at me. I'm like, oh crap! So I tried to rush him, and he wasn't backing up. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get bitten. This guy is not afraid of anybody.
They have like diseases, right? Monkeys, don't they?
They
have,
can,
like,
yeah. A lot of them can. So, but luckily, some of the locals up there had some dogs, and it was actually kind of interesting. I got to see this dog fight this monkey because it wasn't backing up. So this dog, they sick this dog on this monkey, and they're like battling. The monkey kind of jumped down the side of the cliff mountain, was like reaching up and smacking the dog in the face, and then like kind of hiding on the mountain. The dog couldn't get to him because he's like hanging on a rock, and he's like hitting him in the face, and then his now hitting in the face. I'm like, this is the I was like, I should have videoed this. It was the craziest encounter I've ever seen.
Would
this
you have tripped out if the monkey did this to you, like the Family Guy monkey? How cool would that have been, dude?
That would have been ridiculous.
All right, dude, I think you told the story during the break, but you told the story about the dogs, right? Was that during the break?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
So when I went to India, man, there are stray dogs absolutely everywhere. I mean, just ridiculous everywhere. They're like insects are all over the place. I went to a beach town called Goa. It's right on the beach and south of Mumbai, and there were dogs absolutely everywhere, all over the beach, and there'd even be little puppies and in the daytime they're pretty cool because the beach is more popular. But I was out kind of walking around the beach, and I was coming back to my hostel, and you have to kind of go through this little pathway to get to it. Well, I started coming through there, and there was all of a sudden all these dogs just start popping out. It's kind of like Lion King with the hyenas. They start kind of crawling out underneath like chairs and bars, and they all start growling and start like barking. And next thing I know, there's probably 100 of these dogs. And when if people know how studied dogs, when they get in, they're feral and they get in packs, they start getting this like mentality where they're not afraid of anything. So I was like, I'd take a couple feet, and they started growling. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. I was honestly kind of a little bit worried for my safety, because I'm like, man, if these dogs start attacking, like all of them, you're done. So so I had to walk actually an extra half a mile all the way down the beach, all the way up and around, just to get back to my hostel.
Jeez. Damn. Did they have like an alpha dog, a guy that was up in front that you just knew that's the guy right there?
Yeah, I don't know. There was one pretty big one that was seemed to be the lead guy kind of out front that was pushing the action a little bit most. I don't know if he was the lead guy maybe, but there were so many of them. It's hard to really focus on one.
Next time you got to take like a squeaky toy and just like diversion, just squeak it and throw it and see what happens.
Need some of that. What is that? Begging strips.
George, I think we have a phone call for Bryan.
Let's do it. All right. Muna from San Francisco. What's up, Muna? How you doing?
Hey, doing well. Bryan, thanks for coming to the studio.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Cool. Just got 2 questions, but before that, just wanted to, again, thank you again for coming out to the Junkie Gathering. Goes does a great job, and it's always great to get professional fighters to interact with the fans. So it was kind of great. For folks who don't know, we had Bryan Caraway, Kevin Lee, 2 other fighters I'm blanking on, Brony and Justin McCauley. We did a nice kind of a face-off panel news conference type of thing. So it was fun. Want to thank you again, Bryan, for showing up for that. That was definitely entertaining. So 2 questions. First one, it's no secret. You had mentioned getting to fights beforehand, how you'd have anxiety, seeing a psychologist and everything. And I look at your record. You're a 10-fight Zuffa veteran and actually 8 fights in the UFC. I'm just curious if nowadays, if you feel more at home, you've done very well only 2 defeats in the cage. So just kind of curious that aspect of how you feel in the cage. I mean, you've cornered Misha in title fights. You've been around the UFC for so long, so kind of curious on how it feels when you go into the cage these days. And then second question, I'll take it off the air. I'm curious for most fighters who are suffering from injuries who are away from the cage for an extended period of time, things that you do to, supplement the income, whether it's teaching classes, doing other things. We did see you on Pawn Stars, so just kind of curious things that you do to kind of help supplement the income, and I'll take it off air. Thanks a lot, guys.
Oh, Muna, by the way, much like our previous caller, are you one of the toughest guys in your town?
No, that would be, we got Mike Lowry in Oakland, and, Tony, DJ Tony from San Francisco. So those two kind of run the Bay Area.
Damn, Jason Lackey's going to take offense to that. But all right. Thanks for the call, Muna.
The 49ers definitely don't have a say in any of that, right?
Oh, man, poor 49ers. Yeah. What was his first question again? I got sidetracked here. Do we all forget?
How he feels in the cage after, the experience.
From the UFC.
From cornering, coaching, all the roles.
Yeah, I finally definitely feel, I feel definitely at home. Sometimes you make it up, to get the UFC is a huge accomplishment for any fighter. I think that's where everybody's trying to get to. And but once you're there, you realize it's no different, man. The cage door shuts. It's still a cage no matter where you're fighting in front of a lot of people or not. It's still mano a mano, you against another guy. And, I doing the psychology and working with, sports psychologists and all these things and doing positive affirmations and good self-talk and all these things really helped out. And then just being around it, I realized I belong. I beat some good guys, and it goes, you're referring to mental confidence and mental ability earlier. I think that's absolutely huge. People say that all the time. Oh, it's so much mental. It absolutely really is. I believe in the laws of attraction. I believe if you mentally really want it, your brain, you're going to give that much more. You're going to find a way to win. You're not going to, you're not going to give up or concede positions. And, so yeah, all that time being around the UFC, and being in the backstage corner people or doing events with them, you just get really comfortable, get around, used to it. It's like the first time someone ever watches an MMA fight. I remember when I first watched my first MMA fight live, I was nervous. I felt like, nervous and sick to myself. I wasn't even fighting. I was like, my friend was fighting. I was nervous for him, like crazy. And, it's just what you get used to, like some people, you see, blood and guts or whatever, you might throw up, but somebody who's maybe a forensic scientist or something like that, when they're around that all the time, or the morgue or something like that, they're used to it. You get conditioned to things. So I feel like I've definitely got conditioned to being in the UFC, and I feel comfortable there, and I feel at home, and that's a huge factor. Just like when I go, a lot of fighters, they go train at other gyms. And for me, like I train at my gym, I feel super comfortable. You go to a new gym, you notice like, man, I'm in good shape, but I'm a little tired, I'm a little out of breath, my muscles are a little pumped, because you're just not sure expected who you're grappling, who you're going with, the gym, the rules. So being comfortable is a huge mental advantage.
And the second part of this question was, how do fighters supplement income when they're not fighting?
Everybody does a lot of different things. Depends on what kind of your talent is and your personality and stuff. I love teaching seminars. I love teaching technique and seminars, and running that. I'll do some guest speaking things, but first, for me, mostly it is fighting. I make pretty much all my money off of being in the cage. Like, I'll make some money off of seminars here and doing appearances. When I went to Asia, I taught in Singapore, and I did a seminar in India for Superhuman Gym. Awesome gym, by the way. If anybody's out there in India, that's the #1 premier gym, Superhuman. And, make a little bit of money there, but it's really, for me, when I make money wherever I'm going to do seminars, it basically covers that trip, because I'm traveling to do somewhere and I'm just going to spend it. So for me, my meat and potatoes is making money from the UFC or doing appearances for them.
Nice.
There you go, folks. That's Bryan Caraway, UFC bantamweight. He's got a fight coming up December 9th in Fresno, California. The headline bout that night will be Cub Swanson versus Brian Ortega. Brian's opponent will be Luke Sanders. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM Rush 93. You got to take a break, pay some bills. We'll be right back. We'll be talking to UFC lightweight James Vick. Stay close, folks. We'll be right back.
They pat down TSA agents because they don't know where those people have been, and because they can. They are Gorgeous George and Goes, and this is MMA Junkie Radio.
Get the radio channel numbers for NFL, NBA, and NHL games sent directly to your smart device. Go to SiriusXM.com/sportsnow, then click Add to Calendar. You'll even get links to directly listen on the SiriusXM app. All right, folks, we are joined by Bryan Caraway, our in-studio co-host for the day. We are going to break away for just a sec here as we talk to another great fighter in the sport of mixed martial arts. He goes by the name of James Vick. He's 11-1 overall. James will be mixing it up versus Joseph Duffy at UFC 217. That's the fight card, pay-per-view fight card that's coming up at Madison Square Garden in New York on November 2nd. Headlined by Michael Bisping versus GSP, Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw, and Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Rose Namajunas. So 3 title fights on that fight card. Now, you can watch James Vick's fight on FS1. The prelims start on FS1 at 8 p.m. Eastern start time. They'll be the main event of the FS1 prelims. Joining us now on the hotline is James Vick. What's up, James? How you doing?
What's up, guys? How are y'all?
No, we're doing great, man. Happy to have you here on the show. Thanks for giving us some time here. I got to believe your camp's winding up soon, and all of a sudden it's the best day of your life. Fight day. Is that how you look at it? Is it one of those days where you just have a ton of fun on fight day?
Always, man. Today was actually my last hard sparring day, and got those rounds in this morning. Everything went good. Everything's going good, and just, obviously the weight cut, you're never excited about, but after that, I'm ready to go, and I'm excited for this fight.
Why do you think it is that some fighters, that day is fun, versus others, it's like the most stressful thing ever? They're throwing up. Do you think it just boils down to everybody's built differently, or maybe do you attribute it to some fighters just might may not have been as prepared, or what do you think?
Do you want my honest answer?
Yes.
They're mentally weak. Honestly, if a dude comes into the arena, and I've seen it. It's crazy at the UFC level. It's crazy how many, and this sounds funny, but it's crazy how many fighters aren't real fighters. I've seen it in back warming up with some of these guys. They look like they're fucking scared to death, like someone almost has to put a gun to their head to get them to walk to the cage. To me, that's a sign of mental weakness. Like, you shouldn't be that scared and that nervous. I mean, that's a joke to me. I'm like a little kid, at a candy store. This is why I train, to go out there and perform and fight in front of all these people and, live my dream, and it's crazy how it's like some of these people would rather just, if they could, it's like they look like they would try to back out the last minute if that was possible for them. To me, it's just a sign of mental weakness.
But to be fair, it's just a moment, and then once the cage is locked, like guys like GSP are mean motherfuckers, you know what I mean? But otherwise, they're like, oh man, it's like, am I going to lose? Is it all going to be gone? My greatness, my title.
Being nervous is, I'm not saying that everybody's nervous, but some of these guys are just straight up scared. Now, I've never, obviously GSP is one of the greatest fighters of all time, and I've never seen him warm up backstage, so I don't know that, I can't make an analysis on that or whatever. Right. But I mean, there's several guys that I saw back there warming up that just look horrified, and then sometimes they'll come out and they'll look phenomenal, and sometimes they'll come out and they'll get beat. Yeah, it's still, obviously when a animal's backed up in the corner, he's going to fight his way out. That's when he's locked in that cage, he's going to fight his way out. That's human instinct.
But sometimes
our guest here on MMA Junkie Radio.
Sometimes, James, don't you think? I see the point that you're making, but sometimes when somebody puts their whole life into something, everything that they've ever trained for, their life, their hopes, their dreams, their wants, everything, in a flash, it can be gone with the wrong slip. You bob instead of weave, and you get caught with a punch, you're knocked out, and then maybe you're cut from the UFC. Sometimes it's just maybe you put so much hard work in it that you have so much performance anxiety that you want to do good, that and maybe, like you said, maybe it is a point of being, I don't know if right word to say mentally weak, but to be maybe mentally negative, to worry sometimes about what could happen and worrying about the negative side effects if you get caught, or what if this happens. I could see that being negative, but sometimes I think it's just, people train and devote their whole life into that they know that mixed martial arts is such a, such a fickle sport that you can get caught at any moment, and sometimes I think that might really make people, because like GSP, he gets extremely nervous, stressed out, pacing. He would appear to be scared as well, but he goes out there and he kills people, and I think it gives a lot of credit. I don't think people are scared if they're showing up and fighting, knowing that they're fighting the best guys in the world in the UFC, but I can see how that can be perceived.
Yeah, I guess.
They don't have to show up. They don't have to show up. They can take an easy desk job.
Yeah, I agree. I understand what you mean. To a degree. 3 fights ago, I got knocked out on national TV. It was the most humiliating day of my life. But then I came in the next fight when I fought Abel Trujillo, who had a phenomenal record in the UFC. I wasn't nervous coming out there. I wasn't all gun shy. I wasn't, I got knocked out last fight. Some people can handle shit and some people can't. That's just my opinion.
That's absolutely true. I think there are people who are mentally tougher. I see people get beat down in fights and come back and win in the third round. I've seen people who are so talented that they're dominating fights, dominating fashion, and as soon as they get in one bad position, they give up and quit. I definitely think that there is a huge caliber of different between mental toughness and guys who are talented, and mental toughness is two different things. I definitely agree with that. I've seen guys who are real talented and fold under pressure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys that their skill set is so high. They have such a high skill set and physical gifts that they never get put in those bad positions of having to come up. That's few and far between. But as a whole, some of these, there's certain guys that, as a whole, that's very few people. But there's a couple guys that never go through that grind. Like look at Brock Lesnar. Before he fought Cain Velasquez, he never had a grind on anyone. He just went out there and won fights on just ability.
Yep.
All right, so James, I did want to ask you. It's fun following you on social media. You're waiting for them lines to come out. You pounced on Darren Till, made some money there. And, of course, we're in Vegas. We love to talk about gambling itself, gambling on the sport. Are you one of them guys that will, put a little bit on themselves? It's from what we've heard last through Mark Radner, it's not illegal to bet on yourself. It's obviously illegal to bet against yourself. But do you have a little bit of fun with that, or do you leave that to your friends and family?
Oh, I'm going to bet a lot on myself, not a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to bet as much as I can. I always bet on myself, It's worked out every time but one, so I'm gonna keep those odds,
Right.
Obviously, when I say a lot, I have a website I bet with, and they only give me X amount of limit to bet, but I'm gonna bet the max as I can, and
well, word to the wise. Yeah. Word to the wise. Let me jump in real fast. The one thing that I believe was covered at an athlete summit once was just don't be too obvious about it, and don't forget that hopefully wherever you are doing it, we have to say this, it's where gambling is legal, like, for example, Las Vegas, and I think there's a few other states where that can happen. So interesting to say that, but it is a topic I have a ton of fun with. Folks, this is James Vick, our guest here. He'll be fighting Joseph Duffy at UFC 217. It's going down in a couple of weeks. All right, let me send it over to the guys at the Mandalay Bay. Goes Dan, Tom, Bryan, Caraway. What do you have for James Vick?
James, whenever somebody breaks down one of your fights, I always hear this. I always hear how tall you are and how much of an advantage that is. Do you ever feel like when people bring up your height, it almost takes away from your skill set a little bit because they just forget about how menacing you are just with your skill set?
For sure, I feel that way. And also, everyone, they want to talk about how tall I am and this and that, but they got to understand most of these guys have been training twice as long as me too. So that kind of makes up for a lot there that I've been having over these years to catch up on with. So some of these guys have been training since they were kids. I didn't even start training until I was 20 years old. So and I've had 4 major surgeries in that time period, and I've worked a full-time job probably 70% of the time I've been fighting, 80% of the time I've been fighting. So really until the last 2 years. So I think their advantages are more than mine.
Not having done this as long as some of the other guys in the sport, will there be a moment when you go through that curtain at Madison Square Garden and kind of look around and just think, holy shit, this is pretty crazy that I'm here right now?
Well, yeah, it hasn't hit me yet, the magnitude, I guess, of how big it is, because right now in my mind it's still just another fight, But, I guess when I get there and I see everything, yeah, it's probably going to hit me, and I'm going to be like a little kid at a candy store, just excited, you know?
You know, James, I wanted to round it back to the odds and breaking down things just for a second because, you know, I've been watching you fight for a minute, but I've also gotten familiar with you on my friend Daniel Levy's show there. And, you know, you come on, you're one of the few fighters, and I appreciate this. You're one of the few fighters you really like to, you're not afraid to put yourself out there as far as who you're betting on, breaking down fights and this and that. But let me ask you something, because every fighter has a different approach, not really right or wrong, but tell me, has breaking down fights, having to watch tapes, even if you're just trying to do a bet on the side or for one of your own fights, has this helped you in your own game as a mixed martial artist?
100%. And you know, it's crazy. I don't really bet because I don't really watch fights on a little hunting or fishing show. The only series I watch is, I can't remember the last time me and my girl went. I've learned, and I watch people and I study. I watch someone fight and I'll see a technique I like and I'll rewind it 10 times and then I'll write it down. 100% it's helped me progress in a very
for you to say that, but I've also heard frustrations from fighters who they can't climb the ranks because sometimes the you know, the top 5, the top 10 just kind of holds on, you know, for their spots.
Yeah, 100% that's what they do, and it's like, it's nuts to me. It's crazy to me to see. I mean, the top 10, it's like they're grandfathered in where they can lose 2 or 3 fights in a row and still be ranked in the fucking top 10.
Yeah,
like, how
that's
do you
ridiculous.
Lose, you know what I'm saying? Like here's a good example, like Michael Johnson. You know, I'm cool with Michael Johnson. That's my boy and all, but I mean, the dude's lost.
Prelims that start at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. James, thanks for fitting us in your schedule. Appreciate it.
And I have to, and I have to fight with it, or I just have to wear it. I'd do it. 50 grand.
Fighting Joseph Duffy at UFC 217. James Vick, a UFC lightweight. I posed the question to Bryan Caraway if Reebok had a Batman costume, except in the Bryan for co-hosting today, man. I hope you have a safe camp.